calls for change coming from a group of South Florida residents. Concerned citizens protesting outside Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen office in Southwest Miami-Dade. The group demanding that Congress get its act together and start focusing on job creation.
If we don't have jobs, we can't play the stock market, and we can't do any investing, and we can't put money into our economy. We can't buy clothing, we can't buy food, we can't buy the things that we need in order to survive. So if without a job, there is no economy.
The protesters were eventually allowed into the office to discuss their issues with a district director. About 100 people gathering outside Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart's office in Doral. The group upset about the bickering between lawmakers in the recent debt ceiling debates.
Here, we want to tell Congressman Diaz-Balart, as well as the rest of Congress, that, you know, they need to change their focus. It needs to be about getting people back to work and creating good-paying jobs.
Demonstrators asking Congressman Diaz-Balart and other lawmakers to cut their recess short and return to Washington, D.C. to focus on the economy.
It'll lead to new jobs for construction workers, for teachers, for veterans, for first responders, young people, and the long-term unemployed.
In front of a joint session of Congress, the president reveals his plan to get America back to work.
That plan would cost $447 billion, but he promises it wouldn't actually increase the deficit. Payroll taxes would be cut by 50% for most workers and small businesses. $50 billion would be pumped into rebuilding worn-out bridges and roads, and $85 billion would go to the states to rehire people like police officers, firefighters, and teachers, also to modernize some rundown schools. Details on how he plans to pay for all this are expected in the next couple of weeks. So that's the plan, but now he has to get Republicans to pass it, which won't be easy.
Tonight, we talk with one man out of work for 2 years who hopes politics won't get in the way of getting back to work.
NBC Miami's Jeff Burnside picks up the story from there.
Well, we first introduced you to Rodelio Conesa on Tuesday. He took part in a jobs protest outside a Republican fundraiser in Coral Gables. His story seemed to resonate with many of you. So tonight, we went back to Rodelio to watch the president and get some wisdom from the common man.
The President of the United States.
The president spoke to 68-year-old Rodelio Conesa when he proposed a $4,000 tax break for employers who hire someone who's been out of work at least 6 months. Rodelio has been jobless for 2 years.
That's you?
Yeah.
You like that idea?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Let's see what happens. You know, the problem is now that both parties have to get together and vote for that legislation, you know.
He's been a maintenance man, janitor, handyman, hardly missed a day of work since coming to America from Cuba 20 years ago.
I was born the day I came to the United States. I was born again, you know. So I will be 20 years old.
She's bigger.
At 4'10", he thinks big. He calls his new country a beacon to the world. He grew up in Las Villas, Cuba, listening to Voice of America and studying American history. He has not soured on America, despite his new hardship.
I am living off some money that I got in the bank, but it is going down and down and down like a plane, and it is going down. In a few, 3, 4, 5 months, it will be gone.
So they drink tap water, no restaurants, no air conditioning. Reading at home doesn't cost anything. He's proud. But being jobless hurts.
You feel like you are not worth enough. If when you are working, you feel as if you are bigger and you were worth a lot, you know, because you know in some part of your brain that you are being helpful to you, to your family, and to your country.
So the president got his support tonight, building schools, roads, bridges, payroll tax cuts, acting for the people, he says, not for the party.
But if they want to work for the people, they must be together and vote for that legislation. Maybe with slight changes, maybe, but they must pass it.
Redelia voted for John McCain, leans Republican, but backs the president now because he says Congress needs to do something and do it fast.
We reported about a protest outside a GOP fundraiser on Tuesday. The donations go to the National Republican Congressional Committee, not just to Congressman Allen West, as reported. West and other members of Congress do receive money from the committee.
From Miami-Dade, Broward, and the Keys, this is South Florida's CBS 4 News.
Well, jobs, health care, and education were all hot topics today at the Congressional Speak Out. 3 congressional representatives were in Miami to hear the South Florida community talk about all the struggles they have been dealing with during this economy. CBS 4's Tiffany Hellberg is live in Northwest Miami-Dade. Tiffany, a lot of folks voice their frustrations out there.
That's right, Natalia. Hundreds of people filled the theater here at Miami-Dade College, their voices desperate for help as one after another painted a very grim economic picture, essentially giving these representatives an earful.
Currently, I'm living couch to couch and worrying about what my next meal is. And all of this just to pay tuition for this coming semester.
I quit paying my health insurance because I couldn't afford it.
I am sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Frustration and anger here at this Congressional Speak Out as people tell the 3 representatives on stage that the lifelines of their community are dying. Our jobs, our health care, and our education.
It's a shame that Liberty City looks the way that it looks, and there's no jobs in that community.
4 years ago, I employed 4 gentlemen, and I made $54,000 a year. This year, I employ myself and an assistant, and I make $25,000 a year.
It's a message that did not fall on deaf ears.
Right now, we're facing 2 Miamis.
Representative Frederica Wilson says if you look out at this packed house of people, it's apparent. The tale of 2 Miamis, the very rich and the very poor, a middle class that is nearly gone.
It was quite evident that these are the people who are struggling, and we have to find ways to help them.
Easier said than done, as folks in this crowd need action now, as they wait and wonder when all the debate and all the speeches will finally open the door to opportunity that they so desperately need.
They're just looking for good jobs, and they're looking to be able to have their opportunity at the American dream, and for their children as well, which is slipping away slowly but surely.
Many argue that Americans are apathetic when it comes to politics, but it seems like in this economic climate, many are finding they have no choice but to get involved. Their livelihoods depend on it. We're live in Northwest Miami-Dade. Tiffany Hellberg, CBS 4 News.
And let's hope those congressional leaders can do something about it. Thank you, Tiffany.
New tonight.
When do you want it? When do you want it?
Frustration over the struggling economy and a lack of jobs spilling into the streets of South Florida tonight. Protesters outside of tonight's Republican fundraiser were made up mostly of unemployed workers who are all looking for work.
NBC Miami's Jeff Burnside is live in satellite control tonight with their story. Jeff?
Well, the word is jobs. More and more the all-consuming political word as the economy continues to stumble along and the presidential campaigns continue to heat up. Many of those protesters tonight don't care who creates the jobs, Republicans or Democrats. They just want to work.
What do you want? When do you want it?
They were loud and clear. They want an economy that creates jobs. And the crowd of nearly 100 was right outside the gated community of Snapper Creek Lakes, where the limos were going for a $10,000 a plate fundraiser for Congressman Allen West, whose likeness was carried on a stick, along with headliner Congressman Eric Cantor and other South Florida Republicans.
The politicians are always telling that the jobs are increasing, but I can't see that.
68-year-old Redelio Ionessa came over from Cuba 20 years ago and has worked hard as a maintenance man, a janitor, whatever it takes. Until now, he's been jobless a year.
I do many jobs, so I am not looking for something special. But there are nothing where wherever you go and you make an application, they tell you, I will call you. They never call.
Of course, all this comes less than 48 hours before the president's speech to a joint session of Congress on the topic of jobs, and both parties claiming that they're the party that can create jobs.
There is work to be done, and there are workers ready to do it.
The president is reportedly preparing to announce a $300 billion tax and spending cut and a one-year extension on a payroll tax cut. But once again, his Republican detractors in the House are already saying they will not support the president's proposal. And Florida's governor today said Congress should do what Florida is doing.
I think we're doing the right things here, so I think that that we'll continue to do better than the rest of the country. But I think, unfortunately, we're to a certain extent dependent on what the federal government does.
The protest was organized by 1Miami, a jobs-focused group that used the theatrics of a soup line to contrast the wealth nearby.
And we've got politicians here at a fundraiser at a $10,000 a plate dinner. Instead of focusing on doing the work of the people, they're in there with a bunch of lobbyists.
Suarez says his group will continue these protests until Congress hears them or until they go to the polls in November and vote them out.
You're watching Local 10, home of Local10.com. WPLG Local 10 News at 6 o'clock starts now.
We take you now to these live pictures from Coral Gables, where this crowd has gathered in protest outside a Republican fundraiser tonight. The nation's jobs report is bleak, and these protesters tonight, they are demanding action.
Local 10's Baron James caught up with one of our local lawmakers who is attending tonight's function. He's live with what she had to say.
And Calvin and Laurie, in many ways, these protesters say this demonstration, their message, right on the money. In fact, a lot about money, as many Americans and South Floridians as well struggle to make money and to find a job and to make ends meet. And these people, as you can hear, shouting, we need a job, we want job creation, and they, of course, are not alone.
And if I were grading us, I'd give us a D- as well. At least a D- because we're trying, but nothing higher than a D- because we're not achieving what we want, and that is to produce jobs.
We need to work together. We need to make sure that we focus on job creation, putting people back to work. Unfortunately, Allie, the Republicans seem only to be interested in one job, Barack Obama's, and the president has been urging Republicans and Democrats, and that's what I think he'll do Thursday night, for us to come to the table, work together, and focus on everyone's job.
And right now, back here live in Coral Gables, these folks have set up what they're calling a symbolic Great Depression soup line right outside what is known as the Snapper Creek Lakes gated community of multi-million-dollar homes, where tonight, and I've got my hands on one of the invitations, there is a dinner going on, a private GOP fundraiser honoring Representative Eric Cantor of Virginia, where the plates are starting at $10,000 a pop. And these people are saying that just sends the wrong message. And if you take another look here, you can see some of the placards they're holding, which not only show Representative Eric Cantor, if we can pan over this way, but also Representative Ross Leighton, Representative Allen West, and others. And they say they have a message that they want loud and clearly to be heard by the people not only here at the fundraiser, but also in Washington. And Calvin and Laurie, tonight coming up on Local 10 News at 11, we will hear more from these people in their own words, as well as from some of the Congress people inside.
Parents and teachers and other concerned members of our community joined forces today to help fight two growing problems here in our backyard.
We want jobs! We want jobs! We want jobs!
They are teaming up with State Representative Oscar Brainen to rally support for the American Jobs Act. That movement, of course, aimed at revitalizing schools and employing the jobless at the very same time. Today, supporters held a demonstration at Norland Senior High School, that's in Miami. Supporters of this act say local schools like Norland need $1 billion in renovations to help create countless jobs.
Tough times bringing South Floridians together, praying and hoping for help to get back to work.
From coast to coast, more protesters gathering in cities across the country, all of them angry about the state of the economy.
The night team's Mike Marza live in the Newsplex with more on all of this. Mike?
Well, guys, we already know that Occupy Wall Street movement continues to get some high-profile support. It sparked these dozens of other similar protests across the country. But also now we have this unique and intimate demonstration happening right here in South Florida.
This is a prayer vigil for job creation.
And we need our politicians to do what's right by us, work for us, put us to work, and give us jobs, right?
24 people marched to ignite employment outside Senator Marco Rubio's South Florida office. They hope to pressure him to pass President Obama's American Jobs Act Tuesday. These are faces of the economic downturn. They represent different backgrounds, religions, and situations. But collectively, the group embodies their one goal: to get back to work.
We're looking for what's right, for us to be able to work and provide for our families and give our families a shot at what so many others have had.
This is 7 News, Today in Florida.
South Florida residents holding a prayer and protest demonstration for job creation. About 24 protesters dressed in white at the vigil just outside of Senator Marco Rubio's office along Doral Boulevard and Northwest 87th Avenue. It's aimed to put pressure on the senator to pass President Obama's American Jobs Act.
And we need our politicians to do what's right by us, work for us, put us to work, and give us jobs, right?
Well, the president's jobs bill faces strong opposition from many Republicans in the Senate and the House.
Protesters worked up rallying for jobs outside Senator Marco Rubio's office in Doral today.
What do we want? Good jobs. What do we want it now? What do we want? Good jobs. What do we want it now?
And he doesn't care about the people, because what about us? We need to survive in this economy, and the American people need a place to work. We need to provide for our families, and that's not happening.
The group objecting to Rubio's vote against President Obama's jobs bill in the Senate last night. His constituents say he hasn't offered a, quote, alternative plan to get Americans back to work. The bill fell on a 50-49 vote, well short of the 60 votes needed.
Well, struggling South Florida residents came together to demand action from U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. They went to his office in Doral today looking for an explanation as to why the senator voted against President Obama's Jobs Act. They also wanted to know why the senator voted against another bill that would have put laid-off teachers back to work.
They spoke about the senator shows up immediately when there's an emergency, like a hurricane. But this is an emergency. We have children who are crying because they are starving, because their parents are not working, and they don't have money to feed their children. This is a travesty.
Senator Rubio was not at his office today. Demonstrators vowed to keep going back until they get answers.